Hello everyone, this is part 3 of What If Naruto Was Trained by the Kyuubi, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Naruto's age, 6. Naruto's mental age, 6. Konoha Forest, 6 years ago. In a clearing of a forest at the border of Fire Country, a red transparent flame erupted and dissipated just as suddenly, leaving a small blonde boy in an orange jumpsuit gasping for air in its wake. Take deep breaths, Naruto, Kyuubi instructed. Hi, he rasped out. After about 10 minutes, Naruto recovered and stabilized his breathing. He looked around but couldn't recognize any part of the forest. Anno Kyuubi-sensei, where am I? We are currently at the border of Fire Country, Naruto. Naruto's expression grew shocked. How? We were just a few miles away from Konoha a few minutes ago. Remember I told you I can influence you mentally or physically anytime I please. Well, I used one of my jutsus to get us here. As for why we are here, it's for training. You are still protected in the land of fire, but I don't want any interruptions with your training either, hence why we are at the border. There shouldn't be anyone from Konoha around here for a few months to look for you, and by then we will be gone. Naruto nodded in understanding, before sitting crossing his legs and waiting patiently for his new sensei to begin the lesson. Before we begin, you need to first learn the academic points of being a shinobi before you can even learn how to wield the powers of one. I will warn you, since as a child you may bored easily, that you will have to pay attention for hours at a time on lectures before I actually begin to teach you jutsus. Do you understand, Naruto? Naruto frowned at the prospect and sighed in defeat. Hi, Kyuubi-sensei. Good. Now try to find a nice spot to rest. I want you to get some sleep. You've had a trying day, and tomorrow you begin your training. Kyuubi instructed. Naruto nodded, and get his backpack to begin looking for a suitable spot in the lush forest. After looking for some time, he finally found one that would suit his needs perfectly. It was a little enclave inside a trunk of a rather large tree. It supported him while he slept, and kept him fairly hidden from people, predators, or nature itself. Once he finished unpacking, he nestled himself into the tree and fell asleep soon after. Mindscape. Naruto woke up to a familiar sound on water dipping into a large body of water. He opened his eyes to find himself in his mindscape once more. He wasn't frightened this time, however a look of confusion was on his face this time. He followed the pipes once more to get to Kyuubi's cage, finding the large fox waiting for him. Welcome back, Naruto. Naruto's logic kicked in and quickly bowed to the fox, before standing back upright and moving closer to the golden bars. Why am I here, Kyuubi-sensei? Because I wanted to speed up the process of training you. Kyuubi responded before closing its eyes, and a wave of red flashed throughout the area. I just activated my Hitotoki Hyameru no Jutsu, time quickening technique, inside your mind. As the name suggests, it actually quickens the time in your mind. Or if you want to go another route, makes it seem as though time slows down in the real world. The advantage to this is that now I can teach you twice as much in your head I ever could have outside of it. A side effect, however, is that because it is literally your mind speeding up, your mental age will also grow faster. Naruto was rather confused. He was only 6 after all. The idea of 2 different sets of time was confusing to say the least, quite apparent by his deer-in-headlights facial expression. Kyuubi could only chuckle at the boy, before it continued. In other words, Naruto, if you spent 2 whole hours in your mind just listening to me, and then went back into the real world, only 1 hour would have really passed, but your mental state would still be 2 hours older, understand? Naruto thought for a moment before a large smile raced across his face, and he nodded his head enthusiastically. You're saying that my mind will grow faster, but time is still normal outside, right? He asked, getting a slight nod from the fox, making his grin even wider. So are you going to be teaching me something now, Kyuubi-sensei? Hi. Because this is your first time I will go easy, but don't expect me to be lenient later. I will be teaching you the history of shinobi and chakra, and how beings have come to harness and bend the elements to their whims via chakra. Naruto smiled, his eyes clearly showing excitement and interest, as he simply sat there and listened to the wizened fox sharing its wisdom. Many hours went by, and just after finishing an example of how a kaiten, fire, jutsu works, Kyuubi finished its lecture. Alright Naruto, it's been about 16 hours in here, so your body should be rested enough to begin the physical training I have planned for you today. Okay Kyuubi-sensei. I'll be leaving then. That session was cool, I didn't think that shinobi was so fancy. Naruto joked with a smile before bowing to his sensei and phased out of his mind. Real world. Even though he believed Kyuubi, it was still hard to believe that only 8 hours had passed in this time. He enjoyed the sounds of the forest just waking up with him, it made him rather happy and calm. Naruto, grab some breakfast from your backpack, stretch and then we'll begin your physical training. Naruto did as he was told and got a box of cereal he had packed. After eating he stretched out his body as best he thought it should be before giving Kyuubi the go-ahead. Alright, now that you are done we can start. Just so you know what you are getting into, by the time you go to sleep tonight, I want you to have completed 0.200 push-up, 200 sit-ups, 200 log kicks, 200 log punches, 200 chin-ups, as well as run 5 miles. You may think this is a lot for your first day, but if you forgot I am here, plus this is important fitness for a shinobi's physical abilities. You need to be able to both give and take blows, this training will help you cope with the physical pain of fighting. I suggest you get started on your running, without my chakra your endurance is quite lacking right now. Naruto was rather blown away at his new regimen, but was still excited to begin his life as a shinobi. He did as the Kyuubi suggested and started off on running, and finished it but later than he would have liked. He then started on the rest of his workout, letting the hours pass by as he bled and sweated while finishing his tasks. Eventually he finished them, and grabbed a quick ramen cup for his dinner, though it took him a while to build a good enough fire to heat the water he had found in a steam well enough to soften the noodles. After dinner he put out the fire and went back to the tree to get some rest. Mindscape. Naruto heard the usual DSS and simply got up and followed the pipes once more. He reached the cage and bowed respectfully before taking a seat on the floor. Did you finish the physical training I gave you today? Kyuubi asked in a bored tone, getting a nod from its student. Very well. I would continue where I left off yesterday. But I'm not a school teacher, so I'm going skip all of the filler information about chakra and its history, since I gave you the most important points last night. Today I will teach you about controlling chakra to do things like enhance your physical performances, such as running, jumping, etc. You will learn the many ways chakra can help you in most things that you do every day. By the end I expect you to attempt and accomplish some of the easier exercises. Be warned Naruto, that what you do accomplish physically here will not be transmitted to your body. So when you wake up you will mentally remember what to do, but your body will have to relearn how to do it. Learning anything physical in your mind just allows you to learn it faster in real time because you already know what you need to do, you just need to reapply it to your physical body. Naruto was a bit annoyed that he'd have to reteach himself out of his mind every physical thing he learned. But he still couldn't help but be excited that he was actually learning to use chakra. After many hours of lectures and then trial and error, Naruto finally got a grasp on controlling his chakra. Much to his disappointment when he was really starting to get into all the different things he could do, Kyuubi's voice rang out getting the boy's attention. I see you have a fairly decent grasp of chakra control. I'm rather impressed for someone at your age to do so, but with your Car-san's Kekkei Genkai I'm not surprised. Kyuubi said, though mentally slapping itself for mentioning Naruto's taboo. Not much to Kyuubi's surprise at the mention of Kushina, Naruto's grin turned into a scowl, and his jovial eyes took a rather hateful look. So, Kushina left me a Kekkei Genkai ne. What is it Kyuubi-sensei? Will it at least be more useful to me than she was? Naruto asked in an emotionless tone. Kyuubi mentally cringed at the boy's reaction to his mother, but quickly steeled itself and get back to the point at hand. I would say so Naruto, it is actually one of the stronger Kekkei Genkais I've ever come across. It may not be a dojutsu like the Sharingan of the Uchiha clan or Byakugan of the Hyuga clan that reside in Konoha. But in sheer ingenuity, raw power, and nearly limitless applications I doubt anything could match it. Sadly though, because it doesn't have a physical outward manifestation, the Uzumaki clan never had any reason for naming it. However, I did learn what it entailed before I was sealed. For all intensive purposes, it's a chakra multiplier. Their Kekkei Genkai bestows upon them literally 4 times the chakra reserves of normal people. The best example I can give you is yourself actually. After you were born but prior to my sealing in you. You already had the chakra reserves of a mid-level genin, which for being a newborn baby is amazing to most people. But this is commonplace for Uzumaki babies. Of course, after my sealing in you, your personal reserves shot through the roof because of our fusing chakra. So I'd estimate that after I was sealed in you and the fusion started, your reserves jumped to mid-chunin level before you were even 1 year old. But getting back to their abilities, because of this large chakra capacity, they were able to learn harder level jutsu sooner than most shinobi of the same age or rank, easily reaching higher shinobi ranks at younger ages. And after a time they had actually decided to make their own jutsu style named after themselves. They took versions of the most known jutsus in Fire Country and hybridized them with their Kekkei Genkai. These jutsus, although very similar in both hand seals and performance to use them compared to their original counterparts, were in a league of their own when it came to their results in the field. Truth be told, it was the Uzumaki clan and the personalized jutsus that had forced me back into the forest where I fought with your Two-san. That is the gist of one of your Kekkei Genkais, Naruto, and with the training I'll be giving you, you'll be thanking the high heavens for it. Naruto absorbed the entire topic like a sponge, and although he hated his mother and her clan for what they did, he could not deny the Uzumaki blood that ran through his veins and the advantages their Kekkei Genkai gave him, no matter how much he wished it. Knowing that sulking would do nothing to alleviate his feelings towards them, he grew intent on learning anything he could about their abilities and making them his own. Arigato Kyuubi-sensei, I'm sure my Kekkei Genkai will help during my training as well as afterwards. He said, bowing. Also, what did you mean by just one of my Kekkei Genkais? Do I have more? It's fine, you deserve to know what is inside of you, whether it be me or something else. I will not keep that from you if you ask. As for your question, you have another Kekkei Genkai, and a third one that is my own. The second one is your Two-san's actually. This one as well doesn't have a name because as with the Uzumakis it has no outward manifestation. The reason you Two-san was called the Yellow Flash was because of his ability to use the Hirashin no Jutsu, a jutsu which no one since has been able to successfully use to my knowledge. However, what you probably don't know is that the Hirashin itself isn't his Kekkei Genkai, it's just a jutsu he created when using his true Kekkei Genkai. Much like the Juken is used by the Hyugas Byakugan and Tsukuyomi, Amaterasu Are for the Uchiha's Sharingan. Officially though, his Kekkei Genkai has to do with the cells in his body, which allow him to move at the speed of light without having his internal organs and bones crushed from the sheer pressure exuded at that speed. Because of his Kekkei Genkai's ability to keep his body in a stable state at ungodly speeds, it became only natural that only his bloodline could actually harness the power of the Hirashin no Jutsu, after its creation. And so that is your second Kekkei Genkai, Naruto. As for your third, it's not really a Kekkei Genkai, per se, mainly because it's not in your blood, it's in your chakra. I like to call it a demon limit, but I digress. When you get older and you absorb more of my chakra, you'll gain some of my abilities and likenesses. But you won't have to worry about what they are for some time. I'd rather have you concentrate on your training for now. Naruto just stared at the large fox, for a good 10 minutes before a reaction finally erupted from him, in a long and rather maniacal laugh. So, you're pretty much telling me I'm going to be an awesome shinobi when I get older after all your training? He asked excitedly. Well, I certainly wasn't exaggerating when first told you that after my training you're going to be the strongest shinobi that this realm will ever see. The fox grinned back, liking the boy's attitude towards all that he was told. But don't let all I told you go to your head. You still have to survive my training, Naruto, and now that you know your limits I won't be going easy on you. Hi Kyuubi-sensei. He smirked back, not being able to wait to get back to training. Okay, now get back out, it's about time you started your physical training again. Hi Kyuubi-sensei. He yelled before phasing out of his mind. Real world. Naruto woke up from his sleep refreshed as usual, did a few stretches before grabbing a quick bite to eat, and waited for instructions from his sensei. Alright Naruto, first I want you to get your body under control of your chakra like you had done in your mind. Naruto nodded, and took the last few morning hours to reacquaint his body with chakra control. Once he had it down to where he is currently at in his mental training, he stretched some more, knowing his real training was coming soon. Very good, Naruto, you actually got your body a bit more used to chakra control than you had it in your mind. Now for today's regimen, I want you to do 500 push-up, 500 sit-ups, 500 log kicks, 500 log punches, 500 chin-ups, as well as run 25 miles. But I don't want you to use your chakra except for your last 200 reps of each set, and last 15 miles. I want you to both build up your body's toughness and strength, while also getting used to using your chakra for different things. It will be good practice for you. Hi Kyuubi sensei, he acknowledged before bounding off. This is how things went for Naruto and Kyuubi's training. The boy would learn ninjutsus, genjutsus, taijutsus, and shinobi history while he slept in his mind. Then took those lessons he had learned and incorporated them into his body while he was awake. Kyuubi was rather impressed. The boy was like a well-oiled machine when it came to lectures and training, and sooner than either of them realized 8 months of their training went by. 8 months later, Naruto had just finished his daily regimen of tasks that his sensei had him currently following. He was now up to 2,100 reps of every exercise, running for 50 miles, did weapons practice, chakra control exercises such as tree climbing and water walking. He also began learning rudimentary jutsu such as the substitution outer of bushin. Naruto himself now looked a lot more fit than he had prior to leaving the village. His body grew more, thanks to his training, and his sensei for teaching him important survival skills as well. Naruto was currently picking up the Suriname and kunai he had been practicing with earlier and put them away before he went to grab some fish he would grill up for dinner. Naruto began cooking the fish over the fire he made with the only elemental jutsu Kyuubi was willing to teach him at that time, which was for survival's sake only. Naruto. Hi Kyuubi sensei. I think we have spent enough time here. Tomorrow I want to head to Wind Country, more specifically to Suna. You need to learn people skills, as well as a few Doton, Earth, and Futon, Wind, Jutsu. Yes, I am finally allowing you to learn elemental jutsu outside of your mind. However, your daily regimen will not change, so do not push yourself with learning a bunch of new jutsu all at once. You will have time, so don't rush into things, understand? Naruto listened intently to his sensei and was actually a bit sad to have to leave this place that was his home for nearly a year. But on the other hand, the prospect of going to a new place and even learning jutsu was too exciting to pass up, and a smile fell upon his face. Hi Kyuubi sensei, he answered before grabbing his fish and ate merrily. As he slept, Naruto did mental training with his sensei as usual. This training was commencing much faster than his physical training simply because of the time he spent doing it. By now he had learned all the concepts of ninjutsus and their elements, the activation and dispelling of genjutsus, and the pros and cons of different taijutsu styles. He was currently learning the concepts of nature manipulation in chakra and the results it can have on jutsu, as well as the little information that the Kyuubi had on healing chakra. Kyuubi had finished its night of lecturing early because it wanted Naruto to get an early start towards Suna. Naruto awoke, had a quick breakfast, and headed towards the land of wind after packing his stuff. Kyuubi knew this realm like the back of its paw and knew every shortcut imaginable to get to Suna faster. It only took Naruto half the day to get to the outskirts of the desert using his chakra to enhance his speed, and the directions from his sensei. Wow, this looks like a giant lake, only with sand instead of water. Naruto said, gapping towards the nearly never-ending sea of sand. Trust me Naruto, it's a lot bigger than you think, and if we want to get to Suna before nightfall I think you should use my chakra. Naruto nodded and grinned happily. Naruto didn't want his sensei to know, but for some reason anytime he used Kyuubi's almost unlimited chakra supply, it always felt warm and welcoming inside his body. He didn't know why it was like that. His own chakra felt cool and calming, but the red chakra he could honestly say he enjoyed using simply because of the feelings it gave him. No sooner had his grin appeared, was he already kicking up a dust storm in his wake, heading towards the hidden sand village. Sand village. No, you can't play with us, you freak. A young boy screamed at another young child with dark red hair. But why not? You guys need another person, right? The redhead spoke, confused on what the problem was. We do, but we don't want you to be it, so why don't you just leave? Another boy shouted, before grabbing a pebble and launching it at the redhead, hitting him in the face. The little redhead was rather scared when he saw the group of boys move towards him. Sure, he hadn't actually done anything to them, hell, all he asked was to play with them. But that still didn't stop something in his subconscious from snapping. The boy grabbed his head in pain and began to groan, slightly falling to one knee, before the sand on the ground around his feet began to shift around almost like it was alive. The sand picked up faster, and then out of nowhere a large missile of sand shot out at the boy who threw the rock. The sand was almost to its target before a voice called out, halting its attack, falling to the ground immediately. Hey, what are you guys doing to that poor kid? You know it isn't nice to pick on others. The voice rang out. What's it to you? You must not live here if you don't know this kid is just some freak. The pebble-throwing boy retorted snidely. The mysterious boy disappeared soon after the sentence was said before all 7 boys who were bullying the redhead toppled over in pain, bruises appearing on their boss. They looked back at the mysterious boy, fear evident in their faces, before they all ran home in fear and pain. Hey, kid, you okay? He called out to the redhead, whom looked up to see bright blonde hair and a pair of blue eyes staring at him. The redhead was still scared though, and when the blonde leant his hand down to help him up, the sand from before clamped down on the hand and crushed it with a sickening crunch. The blonde cringed and slightly cried out in pain, as the sand slunk away, showing a now bruised stump. The blonde stood up and closed his eyes in concentration before red chakra encompassed his hand, repairing the crushed bones and sped skin. Once his hand was better, the blonde tested it out, and nodded in satisfaction on its recovery before looking back towards the redhead, who was just staring at him in pure shock and fear. Hey, you mind not doing that again, it really hurt. He blonde said with a smile on his face before extending his hand once more to the boy. Slowly but surely the redhead got courage enough to grab the boy's hand and was helped to his feet. Naruto smiled while still shaking the boy's hand. My name is Kazama Arashi, I just came here from Konoha. What's your name? The redhead was rather taken aback from Naruto's behavior. No one had ever stayed around him for more than 5 minutes. Especially if they lived in this village, and even more especially if they saw the weird sand thing he did. Not even he knew what it was or why it happened. However, something inside the boy told him to try to be friends with this weird blonde-haired boy. And he did just that, finally beginning to put in an effort to shake. I'm Sabaku no Gaara, the redhead said, still apprehensive about talking too much to the boy. Gaara, a cool name. Gaara, surprising himself, actually had the nerve to smile at the boy's simple adjective towards his name. They soon returned to their normal stances and went to a swing set that was nearby. A quiet atmosphere hung around the two as they swung. After some time, Naruto couldn't take the silence and spoke. So, Gaara, why were those kids, picking on you? Gaara physically stiffened at the mention of the other kids, but relaxed after remembering what Naruto had done to them. He held a downcast expression. I don't really know, they keep calling me a demon, or freak. I'm not sure why, it might have to do with that sand thing that attacked you. Or they hate me because I'm the Kazekige's son and not them. Naruto frowned at his answer, before smiling. I see, well, other than crushing my hand, I think that sand thing is pretty cool. And you must be pretty strong if you are the son of the leader of the village, right? I guess. I haven't really thought about it. I'm usually worried about people yelling or throwing things at me. Wow, he is really similar to me. Naruto thought offhandedly. Gamen. I know how you feel though. Naruto paused before sighing. Back in my village people didn't like me either, also for things I can't control. He finished, leaving what he meant hanging in the air. Gaara looked up from the ground towards the blonde boy, wondering what happened, and voiced his curiosity. What things couldn't you control? Was it something like my sand? He grinned. Remember that red chakra? Well, people saw that and didn't think it was natural either, so they called me names and tried to hurt me too. I think we are actually pretty similar, you and I. After a few moments, Gaara let out a small smile. Hi, perhaps we are Arashi. Their conversation continued on for several hours while getting to know one another. With Naruto even getting a few laughs out of the usually negative redhead. However, Naruto soon noticed how late it was getting and decided to try to find a hotel. However, Gaara had other plans, and invited the blonde to his family's mansion to spend the night after learning of the boy's plight. After a good 10 minutes of arguing, Naruto finally gave in, and they were off to Gaara's home. During the walk, Naruto and Kyuubi had a conversation between themselves. Naruto: "Hi Kyuubi sensei. And if I may be so bold as to ask, where were you? You were rather quiet while I was talking to Gaara. This is your life, Naruto, you must live it your way. I will not be interfering in it when I don't have to. However, I do wish to talk to you about your new friend there. I'm sure you've guessed that the sand attack that crushed your hand isn't normal, correct?" The fox questioned. "Hi, but it seems Gaara doesn't know what it is either." "I'm not surprised, Shukaku was never one for pleasantries or introductions," Kyuubi stated offhandedly. Shukaku: "Hi, from the history of shinobi that I thought you should remember there are 9 biju in this realm. Shukaku is the Ichibi, and if I'm not mistaken he is the one controlling the sand, meaning that your friend is actually exactly like you, a Jinchuriki, of the Ichibi no Shukaku. But it seems Shukaku hasn't talked with his host yet, so the poor boy doesn't even know he is a Jinchuriki, hence why he doesn't know what the sand is." "I see, should I tell him?" "That is up to you. Being a Jinchuriki yourself, you can relate to the boy like no one else can, and even become good friends, who may later on prove to be a valuable ally, so I would say to tell him, but only him of who you really are." "I understand sensei, arigato for the advice, I will see what I can do," Naruto said respectfully before zoning back into the walk. A few minutes after his talk, the two boys came upon a large mansion with the Kazekage symbol etched into the front gate. Gaara simply nipped his finger and pressed the blood to the symbol, before the gate swung open letting both boys pass. Gaara and Naruto walked into the house and was greeted by one of the many servants who took care of the house. After explaining who Naruto was, the servant left to get his father. A few moments passed before a tall man in cage robes entered the small area. He was a fairly tall brown-haired man, who didn't look all that welcoming to his son and guest. "So I hear you had to save my son from a bunch of kids bullying him," he said in a gruff voice. "Well, it was 7-1, hardly fair I think," Naruto retorted. 7 huh? Well, I suppose I owe you my thanks for saving him then, Mr. Kazama Arashi. Naruto cut in to introduce himself. "Kazama-san, now then, what can I do to make us even? I dislike owing people favors," he asked in a slightly peeved voice. Naruto asked for lodging and a possible sensei to teach you Doton and Futon jutsus for the next few months. "Anno, would it be possible to find me lodging for a few months? I'm rather strapped for money right now. Oh, and maybe a sensei to teach me some Futon jutsu that your village is so famous for, as well as a few Doton," he requested, while bowing respectfully. The Kazekage quirked a curious eyebrow at the boy's request. He figured the boy would just want money, but his requests were actually quite strange to him. "If you promise to stay out of the way, you may stay here. Letting you stay in a hotel under my orders free of charge would be too troublesome with the paperwork I'd get. However, for your second request, as the Kazekage of this village, I would like to know why such a young boy who has no ties to any shinobi village would wish to learn our village's jutsu," he now asked suspiciously. "Arigato Kazekage-sama for the hospitality. I promise to not get in your way while here. And, well, truth be told, my parents and I were planning to move here, but while we were in the desert we were ambushed by a bunch of shinobi bandits and both my parents were killed. I was barely able to escape when a sandstorm occurred and I could get away, finally ending up here. The reason I want to learn jutsu is so that if that happens again I can protect myself. My parents were ex-shinobi, so they taught me the basics of being a shinobi, but that alone won't help me in the real world, so I hope you can help me," Naruto said, lying through his teeth and finding it pretty easy to make up a story like that on the spot. Gaara's father stared at the boy, examining him with strict scrutiny, but finding no deceit in his voice, posture or eyes. His eyes had actually softened slightly at the mention of his parents' s. He himself was still heartbroken over the lose of his wife after Gaara's birth. Most people see the Kazekage as a heartless and cold man who cares nothing for his family and only his position as the village leader. But that's just because he has to be for appearance's sake. After all, if the cage is weak, the village is weak. He loves his 3 children very much, but it's hard to show it when your wife SD right after the last one is born, and then dealing with the pressures of being a leader to an entire village. Gomenasai for your parents, Kazama-san. For now my home is your home. And I will see what I can do about getting you a sensei. Perhaps Baki could do it," he answered softly, but still holding its natural gruffness. Naruto bowed respectfully again. Arigato Kazekage-sama, and you may call me by Arashi if you wish. He doesn't seem like such a cold person once you get to know him, or happen to pull on one of his heartstrings like I accidentally did. Naruto though with a light-hearted inner chuckle. You are probably tired, Gaara show. Arashi-san here to one of the guest rooms. And also introduce him to your Oni-san, older brother, and Oni-san, older sister. He ordered before leaving towards a room which looked like an office. Both Gaara and Naruto bowed to the cage as he left for his office. Gaara then had Naruto follow him through the halls of the mansion. Soon enough they were at a door obviously for children with the colors being much different than the rest of the house. Gaara slid open the door and walked inside with Naruto close behind. The room was surprisingly bright compared to the rest of the house, obviously for the children's sakes. Gaara led Naruto farther into the room, and into a side room where two children were playing. A boy with brown hair playing with a train set, and a girl with blonde hair much like Naruto's playing with a doll. Kankuro, Temari, Gaara called out. Both children slightly stiffened at the voice's owner before looking at him, though soon noticing Naruto's presence close behind gaining slightly shocked expressions. Gaara never brought people home. Gaara, Temari said in a slight shout. Gaara noticed the looks he was getting and was getting slightly apprehensive about the whole situation. But before anything was said his savior finally spoke, saving him the trouble of breaking the silence. My name is Kazama Arashi, I'm Gaara's friend, who are you two? He shouted curiously. At both the words the boy spoke and sheer volume he spoke it in, the two just looked even more shocked. I'm Sabaku no Kankuro, Gaara's Oni-san. The boy spoke. I'm Sabaku no Temari. And I'm Gaara's and Kankuro's Oni-san, the girl finished. Naruto nodded with an almost calculative expression on his face, before a grin spread on it. Cool. Gaara didn't tell me he had a Ni-san and Ne-san. Do you mind if I play with you guys? The two looked rather apprehensive but nodded nonetheless, and showed him a toy chest with Gaara behind him. The children played for nearly an hour, just simply playing with the toys and each other. Not many words were spoken, but in this situation none really needed to be said. Just for the fact that all four seemed to enjoy each other's company now was enough to go on. However, Naruto became tired and soon asked Gaara to show him to the guest room to get some rest before he met his sensei. Gaara did so and left Naruto to his own devices to get settled in, before heading back to his room to continue playing, noting both Kankuro and Temari were already in bed as well. Mindscape. Like clockwork, Naruto woke up in the sewer-like environment, before going to the golden cage. Seems like you had a fun day, Naruto, Kyuubi said in a bored tone. He nodded with a smile. Hi, they were pretty fun. I'm glad Gaara was able to open up around me. I'd feel sad if someone who is like me doesn't want to be my friend. Hi, that would be unfortunate, but luckily that isn't the case, so do not worry about what ifs. You should be worried about the fact that with everything you did with that boy. You skipped today's physical training. Kyuubi left the insinuation in the air until it snickered, seeing Naruto's face fall into sheer terror. Do not worry, Naruto, your befriending of Sabaku no Gaara was a large step forward for you. Not only in gaining new friends, but also a powerful allies in the future. In that case I suppose that I can forgive your insubordination, this once. Kyuubi pretended to finish its sentence while smirking at Naruto's relieved facial expression. I'll just make you do today's regimen tomorrow, on top of what you'd already have to do tomorrow, instead of making you do it right now. It barked in laughter, seeing Naruto start to bawl on the floor crying at the unfairness. I'm going to get you back somehow, Kyuubi-sensei. He promised after regaining his composure with a wicked smile. Although to say that Kyuubi and Naruto's relationship are on friendly terms would be far from the truth. To also say that they hate each other would be quite the contrary as well. Since Kyuubi began to train the boy, both of them began to tolerate each other a lot more than before. You could even be so bold to say that they are closer than just acquaintances, but definitely not friends. They make a few jokes here or there at each other's expense, but that's about as far as it has gotten. Good luck with that, Naruto. I'm jailed up inside of a 7-year-old boy. I can't see how much worse it could get. Anyway, we are wasting valuable training time, so let's start from where I last left off. Kyuubi spoke, finishing off in sensei mode. The next day, Kyuubi had stopped Naruto's mental training a few hours early to allow him to get more time to get his physical training done. Naruto had a pretty hard time keeping himself scarce while he trained lest he rouse suspicion of his actions and put in jail with Suna thinking him a spy, or just throw him out. Thankfully, because he wasn't in any suspicion to begin with, it was easy to trick any Suna guards that he was just running home, or whatever excuse he came up with. By the time he finally finished he was too poop to poop, as they say when he re-entered the Kazekige's mansion to get breakfast. Sadly though, his stomach would have to wait since apparently the Kazekige asked him into his office the moment he got in. He appeared to knew what Naruto was up to but didn't seem to mind, to the relief of the boy. Naruto trudged into the Kage's office, to see a rather spacious room, much like the Hokage's office. Only a lot more open. The windows in the office were all open so when the breeze blew it entered the office and allowed a moment of coolness to refresh the room and any inhabitants. Naruto noticed Gaara's father sitting at a desk in the middle of the room, and also noticed another man on a kneeling posture in front of the desk. Naruto took a moment to look at the man, easily telling he was a Junin by his tight and flak jacket. He was hesitant to enter, but soon got a nod and wave from the Kazekige to enter. Arashi-san, you are in luck. I was just talking with Baki here, and he said that he would be glad to help you and learn a few of our village's jutsu as a thank you for helping Gaara. However, he did request a test of sorts to see where you stand skill-wise. You will be trained either way because I'm the one requesting it, but I suggest you go all out. I heard your exploits from several of the patrols of the regimen you pulled off today. So Baki and I know you are fairly competent in the shinobi ways. Arigato for the opportunity to learn this village's jutsus, Kazekige-sama, Baki-sensei, Naruto responded, bowing. If I may, I would like to get started as soon as possible, so if Baki-sensei is ready, could we do the test now? Both of the men in the room looked at the boy with slightly widened eyes. This boy had just finished a very taxing regimen of physical exercises, stamina and endurance. And yet he was asking to be tested by a Junin immediately. Both men looked at each other for a second before smiling slightly, thinking the same thing. This boy is something else. Baki got up from his position on the floor. Very well, Arashi. I was planning on letting you rest a bit first, but if you wish to begin now, that is also fine. Naruto nodded enthusiastically, waiting for the men to lead him to the dojo which test would be taken in. The dojo was the stereotypical kind, weapons hanging on the walls, wooden dummies in the corner, and a wide open matted area for training. The Kazekige went into the middle of the ring, and told the men to get in their positions. Alright, Arashi, the goal of this test is simple, get a single hit on Baki. Nothing but taijutsu is allowed. The Kazekige ruled, before slicing his hand down, signifying the beginning of the match. Both Naruto and Baki disappeared from sight for a moment before the thudding of feet was constantly heard on the floor. Naruto knew he was pretty advanced physically for his age. But going against a veteran Junin in taijutsu. It seemed rather silly in his opinion since he couldn't very well win, but he decided he liked the thought of a challenge and took the initiative to fight with everything he had. He let his chakra flow to enhance his speed and strength to try to catch up to the older man. Baki on the other hand was quite fascinated by the boy. Although he was clearly no match for him, that only seemed to drive the boy that much harder. Like the challenge made him work that much more, and inevitably make him that much stronger the longer the fight lasted. Not only that, but both the boy's speed, power, control over his chakra was astounding to say the least for a boy no older than 8. Both he and the Kazekige knew that whoever the boy's father was either a masochistic sensei, or a damn genius to get a boy this young this far in such little time. Nearly an hour had passed and the fight was still going, surprising both Baki and the Kazekige yet again, and the kid's stamina. Where the hell is this boy getting all this stamina and chakra from? He should have collapsed by now. They both thought in slight awe of the boy's performance. Not much later, however, the match was called. Naruto had finally accomplished his test, though in a way neither of the men would have thought he would with how he was fighting. Although clearly looking beaten to a pulp, Naruto still held his own pretty well considering the vast difference between him and his opponent. He was able to take a nice S into Baki's arm, when he seemed to have, accidentally, dropped his guard and gave the Junin a clear opening to his chest. Baki took full advantage thinking Naruto was getting tired and gave a hard punch into the boy. But not noticing Naruto's smirk till it was too late, while raised his hand on top of Baki's forearm and just let momentum do the rest, leaving almost 3-6 inch long cuts along his arm. Baki got out of his fighting stance once he felt the slight sting in his arm, and smirked at the blue boy who was just indented into the far wall and currently slouching over on the floor. Not bad, Arashi. Baki congratulated, waiting for the boy's eventual revival. Surprisingly form the SK, stamina, and ingenuity you've shown me. I think I can safely teach you a few standard genin level futon jutsus, and a few chunin level doton jutsus. Do you agree with my choice, Kazekage-sama? Hi. He is more scared than we first believed him to be. I agree with your assessment, Baki. By the way, Arashi-san, I'm curious as to who your two-san was. You said he was a ninja and had trained you, correct? Naruto smiled at the compliments he got from the men, but frowned at the mention of his father. Anno, from what he and Maika-san told me, they were both Junin in the Hidden Leaf Village. But got bored with their lives as civilians, and decided to move to Suna for a change of scenery, and well, you know the rest. He answered in a forlorn tone. He gave a sad smile to the boy. I see. Arigato for telling me, Arashi-san. Once you recover, you and Baki may begin your jutsu training. He finished, leaving the dojo to return to his cage duties. Naruto and Baki went to the Suna hospital to get their injuries healed, before they went outside the walls of the village to begin Naruto's jutsu training. Once they got to a good training spot, Baki began to explain to Naruto the pros and cons of using futon and doton jutsus. Naruto had already learned this from Kyuubi's nightly lectures, so he just pretended to listen, wondering what kind of jutsus he would learn from the man. Once he finished, Baki told Naruto of the possible list of jutsu he would attempt to teach him within the parameters of him only being there a few months. Seems this will be a pointless journey, Naruto. I can already tech you all of these jutsu he just described to you. I was hoping he would give you a few that were newly invented after I was sealed, but seems we have no such luck. Kyuubi stated, annoyed at the situation. That sucks. What is the plan then, Kyuubi-sensei? He asked, downtrodden. Well, it's not a complete waste. It means I won't have to teach you those while in your mental training sessions, since you'll be shown by Baki. Meaning I can teach you the advanced versions while you sleep, since you need to learn how to perform of the beginner jutsus to be able to perform the chunin and junin level futon and doton jutsus anyway. For now, listen to the man and practice them when you can. If you get stuck on one, we'll use some of the mental training sessions to perfect them. Hi. I will do my best, Kyuubi-sensei. I know you will, Naruto, Kyuubi answered, letting a small smile show, though unseen by Naruto. For the next 4 months, Naruto's daily regimen changed slightly to incorporate Baki's lessons. Both Baki and the Kazekage himself were surprised at the rate in which Naruto learned the jutsus that Baki had told him to learn. At some point they both began to wonder if Naruto was a ninjutsu prodigy. But quickly dismissed it from Naruto's rather questionable method of learning, never stopping for rest or food until he mastered the jutsu he was on at the time, being the main example. Unknown to Naruto, he was learning them so quickly that Baki had actually run out of elementary futon jutsu to teach him and had to upgrade the skill level he taught to low chunin. The doton, however, gave Naruto harder trouble even with his mental training sessions to help. So the doton stayed at mid chunin. At some point Baki suspected, but never had a reason to ask, if Naruto actually had wind for his elemental affinity, which would explain his uncanny ability to learn futon jutsu so easily, and also why the doton jutsus gave him a hard time. In the realm of nature, wind and earth were polar opposites. During his breaks from training, Naruto spent time exploring the Sand Village, as well as becoming better friends with Gaara, Kankuro and Temari. He enjoyed the fact that he got smiles instead of glares from the villagers when they walked down the street to buy supplies or food. However, he disliked the fact that Gaara was the one being glared at by the villagers. There were many times when the glares happened that Naruto wanted to just scream at the people for being fools. But he knew it would only not help Gaara, but actually make it worse for the boy, so he held his tongue for the boy's sake. It had been nearly a full year since Naruto had left the Hidden Leaf Village and began his training with Kyuubi. He was rather surprised that so much time had passed so quickly, but then remembered all that had happened and couldn't help but smile. He knew he had become so much stronger than he was when he was living in the Leaf Village. Thinking back, he actually became a little disgusted with how pathetic he was, but he knew it was understandable with the conditions he had to live with. Now, however, it was a whole other ballgame. With all the training he had done, he felt confident he could sufficiently defend himself against most people who wished to harm him, save for maybe shinobi that were Chunin or higher. Content with how everything turned out for him so far, he decided with Kyuubi's guidance of course that it was time for him to move on and go to another village to train more. Kazekage Mansion. A knock at the door aroused the Kazekige's attention from his never-ending paperwork. Who is it? Arashi, answered the voice from beyond the door. Arashi-kun, please come in. Naruto slid the door open and got in his usual sitting position in front of Taikage's desk, before bowing slightly in respect. What brings you to my office tonight, Naruto-kun? The man asked with a small smile. Though trying to hide it for some time, the Kazekage had actually begun to like the little blonde boy. Naruto was actually more of a positive influence on his children than he was when it came to getting them to try to become shinobi. Seeing Naruto's strength and being younger than him, seemed to influence his kids, and before he knew it they had begun asking him to put them into the shinobi academy to become shinobi just like Naruto. Funny thing was, that any time he tried to do the same, both Kankuro and Temari would scream they'd never join, with Gaara just nodding in agreement. But now they would scream if refused their admittance. Anno. I just wanted to say arigato for all that you have given me and allowed me for these past 4 months, Kazekage-sama. Naruto said, bowing once more, making the man quirk an eyebrow at Naruto's wording, but let the boy continue unquestioned. I believe that it is about time I head back home. Baki-san has taught me so much, I think by now I'm unjustly taking advantage of your kindness if I have him teach me more. Plus I think with all your great jutsus I know, I won't ever have to worry about not being able to defend myself again. He finished with a smile. I see. Well, that is certainly your decision to make, Arashi-kun, and if you ever decide to change your mind you will always be welcomed in this village as a citizen and shinobi. Arigato for all your help and hospitality. I will keep that though in mind, Kazekage-sama. I will be leaving tomorrow afternoon then. Naruto bowed once more before getting up and leaving the office. The Kage just smiled as the boy left the office, shook his head with a chuckle and went back to his dreaded paperwork. Naruto finally decided that it was time Gaara found out about who he really was. Naruto knew firsthand how confusing and frustrating it was to have people hate you for a reason not even you know about. So before he headed to bed, he went into Gaara's room and told the redhead he had something important to tell him privately before he left the next day. Naruto's room. What's so important you had to drag me out of my room for, Naruto? Gaara asked, slightly annoyed. Anno, well, remember our talk when we first met about your sand and my red chakra? Naruto asked with a sad and apprehensive expression on his face, while getting a nod from the redhead. Naruto spent nearly an hour explaining the important part of shinobi history that pertained to the Biju, before finally getting to the most difficult part of the conversation. Well, you see, Gaara, the villagers finally learned how to harness the Biju's strength. They seal the demon inside newborn babies with undeveloped chakra systems, which would allow for a much safer and stable fusion of the child and demon, creating what's called a Jinchuriki. My whole point being is that. Naruto paused, already noting Gaara's face changing. That is what we are, you and I. We are both Jinchuriki. Gaara didn't move for a good minute before his reaction was instantaneous. He fell on the floor, thinking the exact same things that Naruto had thought about when he had found out. Naruto simply put a hand on the boy's shoulder for support and let him express his anguish unhindered. After nearly 15 minutes, Gaara finally calmed down and saw a smiling Naruto staring back at him. Hey Gaara, I know exactly how you feel, man, but there are things you should know. About being a Jinchuriki. It's not all bad actually. Having a demon sealed inside us does have a few advantages, especially when it comes to being a shinobi. Your sand, for example, it seems to be controlled by your demon, but what if you trained with him, and learned how to harness its powers for yourself? You could then learn how to control that sand, and use it as your own personalized weapon. For us, our powers are far beyond what other people could possibly imagine. I'm not saying, however, that power is everything. Our lives will always be rough because people fear what they don't understand, or they want to manipulate things for their own gain. All I'm saying is that not everything about being one of us is bad, so you shouldn't be all gloom and doom. You have a demon sealed inside you just like me. We should take advantage of the powers they provide us with. We may be Jinchuriki, but we are not demons. That is what my sensei Kyuubi told me. Gaara, Just listen to the wizened boy, who seemed to know all the answers for the questions that were swimming throughout his mind. Gaara thought very hard about what Naruto told him about turning the demon into a strength for himself when he becomes a shinobi instead of hindrance later. Gaara then remembered what his sand had done to Naruto, and a small glint of excitement gleamed inside of his cyan eyes. Maybe you are right, Arashi, Gaara said lowly. Our lives will not be easy, Gaara, but at least we have each other, right? You and I, we have someone we can relate to, and help out when the other needs it. I'll promise to always be your friend and to be there for you whenever I can be, okay? Hi, the redhead responded with a small smile in his lips. For the first time in a very long time, he was happy, truly happy. Gaara saw Naruto yawn, and laughed lightly before bidding good night to his friend. Friend, it's a word still unknown to Gaara, but he was beginning to understand its meaning. Naruto went to bed, and as per usual had his nightly mental training session learning a few high Junin level Futon Jutsu, as well as low level Junin Doton Jutsu. However, before he left his mind after the session was over, he had a question for the fox. Kyuubi sensei. Hi Naruto. I was just wondering where you planned on taking me next to train. I was thinking of sending you to Water Country and specifically to the Kiri, to try to find another person there to teach you some of the Suton, water, jutsu they are famous for. Kyuubi answered, lightly laughing at Naruto's face. Are there going to be a lot of Suton jutsus that you can teach me too? He asked with puppy dog eyes, though Naruto never realizing foxes weren't exactly fond of certain dogs. Perhaps. It answered, chuckling at Naruto's attempt to guilt it into teaching him. Well, I do know a few Suton jutsus that were used almost exclusively by the Nadaime Hokage. But you'll have to impress me somehow to make me teach you those, and they aren't exactly easy to learn either. So you'll need to show me a rather gifted touch and skill when it comes to casting Suton jutsu. Naruto's head almost exploded from excitement at hearing he could possibly learn jutsu that the Nadaime Hokage once used. Sometimes even Naruto showed too much enthusiasm towards learning, and the Kyuubi had to cut him off, but it still made it laugh when Naruto squirmed over new jutsu. Kyuubi finally told Naruto to get up and get his physical training and jutsu training done before he left sooner. Sand Village Gates. Naruto had just finished saying his goodbyes to the 5 people that showed up to see him off. He remembered vividly the whispered exchange he had with Gaara, when he surprised the boy with a hug. Flashback. Remember what I said that night, Gaara? Learn to use your biju to make you stronger. Don't let the ignorant fools of this village keep you down. Make them learn that you are not to be feared, unless provoked first, and that you are a good person. And lastly, don't forget that I will always have your back if you ever need my help, bro, Naruto whispered while embracing the redhead. Arigato, brother, Gaara whispered back to the blonde with a smile. Flashback end. Well, arigato for everything Kazekage-sama, Baki-san. He bowed. Quote. I will write you when I can, be safe and take care. He finished with a large grin, before turning around and walked into the desert looking forward to his next training year. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.